Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and I can't believe summer is almost over. But to tell you the truth, I'm ready for the cold weather and the snow. Unfortunately, if you live in Seattle like I do, that comes with a shit ton of overcast weather and rain. I could do without that shit, but whatever. I really love this city, aside from the mismanagement of the homeless population. This city has gotten crazy. I was downtown the other day, and on my drive to Alberto's, which is my new favorite burrito place here in Seattle, I saw 2 people shooting up, and I don't think it was insulin. And while I'm sure this happens in every city, in Seattle, people don't even care about the laws anymore. They just do that shit wherever the fuck they want, and anybody can see it, kids or anyone, it doesn't matter. And while defunding the police was a thing here, maybe it's time to start funding them back up. But while seeing people shoot up should really bother me, there are a few other things that bother me even more. The first is human feces on the sidewalk. I get annoyed when people don't clean up after their dogs, but I can handle seeing dog shit. But human shit on the sidewalks? It's everywhere and it's so fucking gross. But the worst thing here in Seattle, not the grossest, but the worst thing is our infrastructure. Our roads are total shit, and the West Seattle Bridge, the bridge that connects me to the city, has been closed for almost 3 years. 3 years is crazy. It's such a joke. But we finally have good news. The bridge is going to be open in a month, and that's exciting for many reasons. The most important is I'll be able to get to the summit at Snoqualmie even faster than before. I expect with my speeding and with the bridge open, I'll make it to the mountain in about 40 minutes, which is amazing. If you live in Seattle and you ski, snowboard, or bike, the summit should be the place for you. And you should know that the bike park is finally open. As of last Sunday, it's open, and I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. The only negative of the bridge being open is now more people can get to West Seattle. With the bridge closed, we haven't seen too many homeless people on the streets in West Seattle. RVs are a totally different problem that I'm not going to talk about right now. But the more I think about it, I doubt we're going to have more people on the streets in West Seattle because the bridge is open. Because if they want to use the bridge, they would need a car, and that's something that most of these people don't have. And I know, I sound totally insensitive. And I know there are a lot of good people out there on the streets who are in terrible situations. But my experience with people in Seattle is a lot of these homeless people are strung out on drugs, and they're assholes to people. My brother was telling me a story about how he went into 7-Eleven and was buying a homeless person some food and some dog food for his dog who was out there. He walked out to the tent that the guy was in and handed it to the guy, and the guy threw it back at my brother saying, "I don't need your help." I don't know if this is mental illness or I don't know if this is drug problems, but there's no reason to be an asshole to someone when they are just trying to be nice. But you know what? The assholes are going to stay here in Seattle because the city welcomes it, and that's just how it is. But if I were homeless, I would move to where my guest this week, Eric Schrijn, is from, Southern California. I mean, the weather there is perfect. But I'm not going to talk about the weather or homeless people anymore. I'm going to talk about Eric Schrijn, and he's a legendary skater who I managed when I was a team manager at K2. Eric's a street skater who is as core as they come, and he was always silently battling something, whether it was dealing with suicide in his family, to managing being diagnosed as bipolar, to destroying the streets around the world. And there aren't too many skaters with the street cred as Eric Schrijn. And he's one of those guys who is truly a pleasure to hang out and travel with. But before I get into Schrijn's story, I want to ask you to subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast and tell a friend about the show. It really does help things grow. And if you have any questions or concerns, please email me at mike@thepowellmovement.com. I will get back to you. Finally, please support my amazing sponsors who make this thing happen. They are Stanley, Elon Skis, Rollerblade, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Now, let's talk with Eric Schrijn. It was you, me, and good friend and incredible artist Ryan Schmees, and I think we were coming back from Woodward West. I was flying out of John Wade Airport, and there were fires everywhere. And before I describe the scene, is the shit I saw that day something that happens every few years around you, like fires are a part of life?
Yeah, it's been more of an occurrence. I want to say since the time you dropped me off, which was probably the worst fire we have had in history. It was called the Witch Site Fire. It was like a campsite. It happened like 20 or 30 miles away from my house, and it just covered everything. It was jumping freeways and whatnot, but it's a normal thing. Like, it happens here all the time. And like, the fire season is around October, November, and it's getting drier and drier. So like, There's like, warnings everywhere. You can't smoke cigarettes or whatnot. Like the police are really on you. It's a thing, and it's scary. It's called firestorms. Like we have firestorms.
And this one was like a couple football fields from your house or maybe even closer. And when we were driving to drop you off, because it was like we were going to drop you off and get the fuck out of there because we didn't want to get stuck in the fire. And we're driving and everyone is on ladders watering their house. I had never seen it before, just hoses watering their houses because they thought their houses were going to burn down. And when we got to your house, we could see the fire. Like it was heading towards your house. It had to jump one more street and then it would be in your neighborhood. And we gave you a hug and we're like, sorry, Schrijn, we got to get out of here. And we bailed. What happens in a situation like that?
Dude, I remember that clear as day. I remember you dropping me off and looking at me and being like, man, I feel kind of bad leaving you here. Like, is this safe? Like, should we all kind of like just get up and go to a hotel or go somewhere safe? Because I feel bad. I feel like we're running towards it,
Yeah.
Oh, man. That was rough, dude. Like, I've never experienced anything like that. And neither has like anyone this town, like Escondido has never seen anything like that. Like people were on their roofs just hosing down the top, to get away the ambers because there were so many coals and ambers floating in the sky, like just in the air, like I remember my car was like kind of messed up. The paint was because there was little hot coals just landing on it, and it was scary, dude. And I don't know, by the grace of whatever, the universe showed some mercy and everything was okay. Nothing caught on fire. And it was so scary. Like I remember that. Like it was just creeping over the hill, just over the skyline. You could see the orange line that like represented the fire.
Yeah.
It was just creeping. And yeah, ever since then, though, knock on wood, we haven't had a storm like that since.
So I experienced the worst one of your life.
You have. You were lucky enough to be there.
Yeah, lucky or unlucky enough. And really, you're born and raised in Escondido. And for a while, I thought Escondido was San Diego until I went there. Then I found out it's a totally different place. I think it's more on the fringes. And is Escondido a more sketchy place to grow up than San Diego? Like you could get in trouble pretty easily there?
You know what? Growing up, like I kind of figured it out. Like I've discovered that Escondido is kind of like a suburb in a way. We're like a county that's kind of tucked away, that's like inland, because there's the coast, there's North County, East County, West and South. And I look at it as like a suburb. No, it's relatively cool. It's kind of country, it's a little mix of country and urban. But back in the day, like I want to say like the 80s, Escondido has like a little bad history with, it's kind of like a redneck town. You know what I mean? Like they had a lot of strict laws. Like they had this thing called the Blue Laws. It was basically a curfew for like Mexicans and black people. So if you weren't white, you had to be inside by like 8 o'clock.
When you were growing up?
No, not when I was growing up. It was like in the 60s and 70s.
How fucked up is that though?
Yeah, dude. Like everyone has a past, and like it's just weird, like the older you get, the darker some of the things you find out are, and it's like, this is weird. But they moved on. Escondido is a real like liberal place, and it's pretty cool.
And going to Escondido, I know I met your mom a couple times, and I knew your dad, Glenn Schrijn. He was a really interesting guy. And when I was your team manager at K2, he would call me and talk to me for hours at a time. And while with most parents, that would get super annoying, with Glenn, it was pretty amazing because he cared about you so much. But I think part of why he cared so much and why he wanted to talk so much was Glenn was blind. And I don't think he could really go out of the house that much or do that much on his own. So he enjoyed talking about you a lot, and being on the phone was something he could do. He was a Vietnam guy, I think. Did he lose his eyesight in Vietnam?
Yeah. He's a 100% disabled Vietnam veteran. When he was out in service, he contracted, I want to say hepatitis or something from everyone back in the day kind of had their way of escaping, that reality. And he was really into hard drugs. Unfortunately, he got a wicked dose and it took his eyesight. That was while he was out there serving. It was crazy because he met my mom blind. So he had me blind, which is weird, like.
He's never seen you in his entire life.
No, not at all.
I've never grown up or been around a blind person that often. You have. Is it one of those things where he's constantly like touching your face and stuff so he can kind of try to get a feel for who you are?
When I was younger, he did, but he didn't really do that. He didn't do like the stereotypic like blind guy role, where he read Braille and stuff. Like he just kind of just kept to his own and figured it out. But as a kid, I noticed he just had a wicked sense of sensory, like he could hear things and he could smell things, like Superman. Like, oh, what the hell? How'd you hear that? You know what I mean? Like
if you were around a cigarette, he would know.
Oh yeah. Like on the other side of the house, he'd be like, okay, someone lit up because, he used to smoke too. And he would always Jones, for a cigarette. And, it's funny. I'm like, oh man, you're crazy, dude. You're like a dog. You have like superpower smell.
And then life at home, when I think about it money-wise, does your dad get checks from the government because he was disabled in the war? Or did your mom have to work her ass off, or both?
It was both. My dad, because he was 100% disabled, he got a pension, and he still does. The VA pretty much covers that. And my mom worked full-time. She was a computer specialist for a telephone company. She worked for SBC. She retired right when they got bought by AT&T. So around like 97, 96.
Okay.
Yeah, like the peak of my career, she retired.
Okay.
So it was kind of cool.
And then your house, it wasn't just you in the house. You had stepbrothers and sisters too. I feel like it was a pretty big clan.
Yeah, like my mom was married previously and she had kids from the first marriage. So it was kind of like, just like a little crew. And my sister's kids were staying with us at the time when you cruised through. Yeah. So we had like a little family house, a little madhouse.
Do you still live in that house?
Yeah.
Okay. And then growing up, did you play any sports or anything before your mom bought you inline skates when you were 13?
Yeah, I did. I played soccer for like 3 years. But like I was a natural like California kid, you know what I mean? Like I always rode my bike. I always was at the beach. Like anything with wheels on it, you know what I mean? I was about it. Like skateboarding, got into skateboarding a little bit. Got into hockey, roller hockey and stuff. And that's how I got into aggressive skating because it just went like poetry. It was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you were friends with Robert Lavanos and Bo Coddington, who are two names in inline skating. They were, a videographer and one of, a very famous skater. And you grew up with those dudes before you guys even got skates. But then when you got skates, it was all about hockey because you turn on ESPN and there's a whole bunch of roller hockey on and everybody's jumping on this craze that is inline skating, and hockey's a way for kids to get into it and have fun. And is that what you guys did? Would just go to parking lots every day and play hockey?
Well, it started off with that, and then like people who really kind of took it more serious went to the Y, and it flourished there because it was so new, and the YMCA was just super positive about it, and embracing. So they had like basketball courts, and they were just converting them into roller hockey courts with like goals and stuff.
Okay.
And then we would go there, and then we would go to like empty parking lots at like grocery stores. I don't know why we had like all these converting like shopping centers that were just giant grocery store shopping centers, and they were always empty. So we just took advantage of that and just played hockey there all the time. It was cool. Like every Saturday, everyone just knew to meet up there. Like some people got there early, but it was an all day thing.
And is this back at the time when you used to rock a ponytail?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, dude.
Just making sure. And then kind of like out of a movie, one day you guys are playing hockey in the parking lot, and the most legendary skater of all time, who isn't really known by anybody at this point, Chris Edwards, just starts rolling in and sessioning a curb, and you look at him and you're like, whoa, I didn't know you could do that on skates. Is that kind of how you saw grinding and stuff?
That's exactly how it went down, dude. Like we heard rumors of Chris Edwards, the legend, and the Fern ramp was like, it's right down the street from me, Fern Street. So it was just like this crazy myth, like, oh my God, dude, like what if one day we come across Chris Edwards? That would be so awesome. And just out of the blue, not even thinking about it, he shows up with his bro and another skater. His name is Jimmy Tremble. And he just rolls up and he's just this loud little guy, dude, who's just like a ball of energy. And he's cruising around. He's like, I could play hockey. And he just pretty much ran circles around everybody. And he had boneless knee pads on, like no hockey gear, just a stick. And he was just mobbing and just going around everybody. And he chilled for a second. And me and my friend Bo were just chilling with our jaws to the floor, like, what is this? And then Edwards gets up. He was doing these power slide grinds. And we were like, what is he doing, dude? And after we saw Edwards doing his power slide grind, we were dumbfounded. Like, what do we do now, dude? Like, holy shit. Like, we were into aggressive skating, and now we're really into aggressive skating. So we're going to go to Encinitas. We went to Encinitas, the Metalaneki YMCA. Like, seriously, Mike, we went there every weekend for, I'm going to say 3 or 4 years, every single weekend. And Bo's mom, dude, bless her heart, she was like our coach in a way. Like, she would always take us places when we weren't old enough to drive.
Right.
So she would take us everywhere. But that was it. That was the spark. Was playing hockey.
And then did you keep seeing Chris Edwards like time and time again in the parking lots or skating with him at the Encinitas Park or anywhere that you were going? Did you start seeing him more and more?
Yeah, like small world style, just kind of run into each other like, oh, hey, happy to see you here again, like at Encinitas. But who we started to see more was Arlo and the Senate guys, like Arlo, Mark Heineken, Brian Kanowski, and Brooke Howard-Smith. They were at Encinitas all the time. We found out that Chris knew them. We're like, oh my God, these guys all know each other. Like, oh wow. And then we started like really, really kind of geeking out and like putting it out there like, oh, maybe we can get sponsored. Maybe they can notice us. What if we make a sponsor me tape?
Well, I think at this time, too, it's funny because Chris is a polar opposite of the Senate guys. Like, he's a youth pastor at that point. And is he kind of reeling you in with his religious part as well?
Yeah, it was all like kind of organic in a weird way, you know, because like at that age and being in high school and stuff like that, like, you know, some people go to youth groups, some don't. And, you know, it's just a weird phase in a weird way. But we were going to church and Edwards was really about it. He was a born again Christian and it was like a door, you know what I mean? It was an opportunity to get us kids in there and get involved to learn about that and then to learn about skating because he had a huge half pipe and a mini ramp at the church.
Okay.
It was a perfect reason, you know what I mean, to go. But yeah, he was like the opposite because he was trying to preach, you know, being a devout Christian. And then on the other side, you had like just these rebels and badass, you know, you had Arlo and Mark Heineken and Brooke. They were just badasses. And it was cool. It was a good duality, you know, to be exposed to.
So does Chris end up hooking you up with sponsors? Like, I mean, I know eventually you get on Team Rollerblade, but really in the progression of your sponsorship, who's the first person to send you a box?
Well, first was Chris Edwards with Birth Clothing because we were so close, you know. And dude, he was rocking and rolling at that time for so long. Like he was an airborne and he was doing everything. And he was a youth pastor and stuff. And he came out with Birth Clothing. He didn't have a team or anything. He just kind of hooked up people with packages and stuff. And he gave me a package and he made it official. He's like, yeah, you're my first AM. I'm like, oh, hell yeah, dude. And the graphics were so cool, dude. They were so edgy, like little sperms and stuff.
And then how does that progress? So you go from Birth, which is Chris hooking up a friend and you're kind of an AM on his program. But what company outside of Chris where Chris maybe introduces you? Is it Rollerblade? Is it Senate? Who's the brand that puts you on first?
Well, it's kind of funny. I went from like a crawl to a walk really fast. Like I went from Birth to being like, okay, cool, this is cool. And then the wheels I was skating at the time, I was skating on Kryptonics. And I had Little Rocks and this lady, her name was Ginger. And I don't know her last name, but she was like my first official sponsor. She was in charge of this Kryptonics program, and she had Corey Nelson under her belt. She had me, and she had a couple other guys, too. And I was like, oh, this isn't real, dude. And she's like, oh, no, I'll fly you out to Colorado.
Yeah, because they were Boulder, right?
Sure enough, you know, she sent me out to Colorado, and we did this thing in Boulder, and it was kind of like a little demo at the skate park, and we just, you know, Matt Mance, too. Matt Mance was skating for him, rest in peace, Matt. You know, he kind of put me onto that. And then he put me onto another clothing company called Hangers.
Yeah, I remember them.
Remember them?
Yeah.
Oh man, I skated for them for a little bit, and dude, that was my first time to being exposed to like the gnarliest warehouse type company. And then like come to find out that like they had like crazy dark past, like they're doing the drugs and laundering money and stuff like that.
Oh,
before that, they were called Eurofunk. I don't know, it's a whole nother story there. So I went from Kryptonics to kind of being in with like the Colorado crew in a weird way, and then like I got exposed to that stuff with Hangers and Matt Mance, and then after that, I was kind of getting flowed K2 products from Tom Heiser. And this was like back in the day when Backyard Bobs were out.
Yep.
He was flowing me those. So I had a good stream of skates and wheels and stuff coming in. And I was just doing my thing kind of on the low. And then Edwards was just like, hey, man, like, because we were always talking. Like at this time, like my circle had developed to talking to Chris a lot, talking to Arlo even, and Mark Heineken, and talking to all my friends and stuff. Because we were going to Encinitas all the time. That was like our hub. It was cool. And then Edwards at that time started making his skate shop called the Birth Station, and this was in Escondido. And then all this is evolving literally within 2 to 3 years. It was happening so fast, dude. And then after Chris had built the skate park, that was like the hub for a hot second. Like everyone would come down, dude. You know, everyone from LA, the Senate guys, and that's how I kind of got connected with Senate and everybody, because we had a place where all of us could kind of see each other progress and skate and whatnot. And me, Bo, Keith Wilson, Robert, and like a handful of other guys were like the new guys, and they looked at us as being like, oh dude, those are like the future. So from that, I got like all in one deal. From right after the Birth Station got made, I was introduced to Arlo, Brooke, and everybody, and then I got on Senate, and then Rollerblade came on right after that, all because of Chris and the Birth Station.
So these are two of the biggest brands in skating. They are the biggest brands in skating.
Yeah.
Senate being the biggest clothing brand, but they are going outside of skating. They're getting bikers and all kinds of people as part of Senate, and they have a ton of visibility in pop culture, which is pretty cool. And then Rollerblade is pretty much the brand that founded the sport. So You're with the two biggest companies in the world, and I would think you're, 17 years old, 16 years old?
Yeah, 16, 17.
You're making real money as a 16 or 17-year-old, right? Like, I mean, Rollerblades got to be
Yeah.
paying you like 30, 40 grand, I would think, at that point. And Senate probably pretty close to that too.
Oh yeah, yeah. When I was like 17, that was right before I started to compete through Rollerblade. That was awesome because they're really into the competition circuit and whatnot, kind of like NASCAR. But yeah, at that time, oh, and I met Dave Payne at the Burst Station too, and just Darren Forth. Like that was such a pinnacle moment, like time. You know what I mean? Like without that cornerstone, you know what I mean? Like it was such a badass place, dude. And it sucks how it went down too. Like fucking Chris just didn't pay attention to the rules and whatnot. You know, they had to get rid of everything because it was a fire hazard. But it was a cool place. Ultimately, though, like moving forward, skating for rollerblade was amazing because I actually got exposed to how a professional like action sport company works. That was the first time I got exposed to an itinerary, what an actual salary was, taking an air flight for a business trip is like, you know, everything. Yeah, and on top of getting paid like an adult, I was like a 50-year-old, you know, when I was 17. I was living a 50-year-old's life.
And you're placing in the top 10 at a lot of the contests. And while you prided yourself on being a street skater, did you put a lot of pressure on yourself to do well at contests? Or was it more, I'm a street skater, and if I do well here, there's money to be made?
Yeah, you know, there was a little conflict there because I had a hard time in the beginning with skating transition because it's a whole different world. Like your muscles are different, like your legs. The first couple times you skate transition, like you're burnt, your back is all thrown out and whatnot, but then you get used to it. You know, and that was probably my biggest intimidation. Like in the beginning, I didn't want to let anyone down, you know, so I tried to keep it as street as possible, you know, so I would do like my one hitters instead of keeping an actual fluid line. But eventually I got the hang of it and I actually figured out how to put together a good line and keep it going and actually keep everyone juiced.
Now it's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm going to start out with Rollerblade, the brand that pretty much invented the sport of inline skating. If you haven't been on inline skates in a while, you are missing out on the most fun way to get in shape. Think a full body workout without the knee pain and jarring impact of running or the expense and travel hassle of a bike. And skating can be whatever you want it to be. Adrenaline pumping high speed fun, recreational fitness, freestyle, skate parks. The opportunities for fun and adventure are endless. On top of that, there's no better way to cross-train for ski season. And Rollerblade makes getting your ski legs back easier than ever with their Skate to Ski app, which is available on the App Store. To find out more about the Skate to Ski app and all the Rollerblade inline skates, head on over to rollerblade.com. My next sponsor is Elan Skis, and I'm in love with my ripsticks. They are so fun and lively, all while remaining light and stable. And there's something different about skis designed in the Slovenian Alps by real skiers. And what's really amazing is that they built a solar power plant on top of their state-of-the-art factory. And Elan let me know that this independence from fossil fuels, along with the new solar plant, will provide a carbon sink as powerful as 15,000 trees on an annual basis. So not only will Elan skis make you a better skier, but they are putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to the planet. To find out more about all things Elan and what they're doing with their factory, head on over to elanskis.com. My final sponsor this round is Stanley. You remember them as the brand with the green bottle that kept your grandpa's coffee hot, hot, hot. While they still make that iconic bottle, they do so much more than that. I mean, they did invent and perfect the category of keeping things hot and cold, and they've been proven to be better than those other fashion brands who rely on marketing, not product. But Stanley also has all you need for your camping and outdoor needs, and they're offering my listeners the best deal they offer. 30% off all Stanley products. And to get this deal, you're going to want to head on over to stanley1913.com, go shopping, and when you check out, enter the code DRINKFAST. That's all lowercase and all one word, and you'll get that 30%. And orders over $100 all get a Powell Movement beanie. Those are my sponsors. Please support them. Now let's get back into the podcast. In the 90s, there were so many contests, and I would think life is getting on a plane every week and skating at a different event. With all that travel, did it impact your schooling?
Yeah, it did. And thank God we had a cool program going on at the time when I was in high school. I got to graduate high school early because we had a home study program, and they still have it now, and it's really cool. It's funny that you said that because I was the first to kind of, because my dad being a veteran, we had the GI Bill, and I had a really good opportunity to take advantage of that and just go to whatever college I wanted to, any UC college, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But at the time, it was literally like the best version, but on the opposite. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, we'll travel the world and do awesome things and make a cool name of yourself, something that you can never do again, or just do exactly what everyone else is doing. You know what I mean? And following that path, which is good, but I don't know. I just dove into that other world, you know, and took advantage of that. I don't know, man, like people were stressed on it, but at the same time, like having homeschool and having that freedom, it was hard, dude. Like disciplining myself, being on the road, being like, okay, I got to get like at least 2 hours of my work done. I got to read this and do your work. And then all your friends are partying and doing their stuff. It's like such a distraction. It was hard, but I doubled down on it and I actually got shit done. And then as an influence, I influenced Louise Moore and Robert and Bo to get into independent study because through me doing that, their parents saw, they're like, oh shit, you can actually do this. You can go on the road and get shit done and get a certified diploma.
If Eric did it, you can do it.
Exactly.
This creates the opportunity for you to travel and do all the things you want to do without having to worry about school. So you can do all these contests. And I think the biggest event of your career were the X Games. 1996, I think, is your first X Games, and you walk away with the bronze and best trick there. Can you describe your first experience at X? Is it just mind-blowing?
Dude, it was like going to Disneyland for the first time as a kid, but you're a part of the machine. You know what I mean? Like you're part of it. It's a whole different perspective. It's hard to describe because you're just like, dude, I'm a part of this, dude. Oh my God, like full on denial in a way, And then you get there and you see all these other events, like the sites for their event, and it's like, Jesus, this is crazy, and then you see the course and it's just mind blowing, you know what I mean? And then going through the steps to get your credentials and whatnot, that was my first time going through that, like checking in, making sure you're good with security. And this was before 9/11, so everything was pretty lax, you know what I mean?
Yep.
The vibe was really chill, dude. Like it was pretty cool. And it was in Providence, Rhode Island. It was so cool. You know what I mean? Just cruising around, and the whole like part of the harbor of Providence was like dedicated to the X Games. We were just walking through the town, like we owned the place, and it was so cool. You know what I mean? Like it was just a really cool experience.
Is that one where your mom and your dad can hear you, your mom can see you on television, and it makes everything real? Like not only is Eric making this money, but he's actually a TV star as well.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. And like before the internet and everything, like this was like the official, like as soon as I started getting on TV, like it was really cool, man. I had relatives calling from out of nowhere just to touch base, like, oh, hey, I saw your kid on TV. Hey, it's good to see you, and I was super stoked. Dude. It was super cool. I don't know, it wasn't even real. It was like a dream, like a dream you never wanted to wake up from.
Well, the dream didn't really work out for you much more than that first year, because when I look at your X Games results, you made the top 5 in that first year. You got a bronze medal, which is nice. You'll have that hardware for life. But then you never make the top 5 after that. Was it nerves, or did you not have the tricks, or why didn't the X Games work out for you again?
Well, it was kind of a weird transition. I was really, really into street skating. So there was a birth of skate videos in sections and whatnot. So I had a real, like I was absorbed with doing that a lot. And like I was competing, but the X Games was kind of ran by a different circuit. Like there was a bigger level to it. And they had certain skaters that were really committed to that. I guess just park skaters. I kind of just did what I could do. And then, I don't know, I found my place in another area and started street skating more, and then really dialing down on skate sections and whatnot. Because at that time, Senate was making, their video, Day of the Rope, and it was a big thing. Contests were really cool, but at the same time, like, I don't know, I really wanted to focus on street skating. Yeah, it's pretty much it.
And then everybody's got their idea of what happened to inline skating at the X Games, and some people will point fingers at Arlo, some people will point fingers... People only point fingers at Arlo, actually. But what do you believe happened with inline and X, if you have a thought on that?
I think it was a bunch of things. I think it was just like a perfect storm of just everything. Us kind of not being organized. We didn't have a face. We didn't have a union to start off with. Not to get deep into that, but like a lot of the other professional sports, they had unions and they had a face or a body that they could present. Say ESPN had a meeting or like a board meeting or something. Like there was presence because they had organization, and we didn't have that, and we weren't anywhere near that, And I think that was a major thing. On top of that, just us being the new kid on the block, kind of having an attitude, but being intelligent, but being just smart asses about it. You know what I mean? And then, I don't know, just everything, like us being like the new, like the hype behind us. And then the way that we went about it, bad form. You know what I mean? Like getting opportunities and just kind of squandering them.
No respect of your elders type deal when you go into those events?
Exactly. That right there, the camaraderie, like just the negative camaraderie or disubordinate, just not having respect at all. And just all that, together, it really didn't help us.
Yeah. But that happens later. As we get towards like 98, 99, you're on top of the world, and skaters know you for your style. You're on Team Rollerblade. And I think your closing sponsor changes around this time, or maybe a little bit after, but Why do you go from Senate to Gap, or how does that whole thing happen?
I was still skating for Senate when I had the Gap sponsored. Gap came in because me being into the competition circuit, which was the ASA, the Aggressive Skating Association, that was kind of like our NASCAR. There was two competition organizations. There was NIS and then there was ASA. And ASA was kind of like the top shelf one. And they had more connections, with sponsors and whatnot. And being as I was skating for Rollerblade, they just had connections, just bigger ones, broader resources. And because of them, I was able to, our whole team did. Like if you skated on Team Rollerblade, basically you had like a percentage on the Gap team. And it was really cool, dude. They gave each rider a card, a $300 gift card, plus like packages. Like they would send me boxes of clothes, dude. Some of them were random, like boxes of belts and like underwear and stuff that didn't even fit. So I would like go to the Gap at the mall and they would look at me like, what are you doing with this stuff? Like, did you steal this off a truck? Like, no, dude, I'm sponsored. That was cool. That was like a random little highlight. It was really cool. And they paid me too, a salary for like a year and a half.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And so between all those sponsors, you've got some money coming in. I'm guessing you buy a car because every kid buys a car. What else do you spend your money on?
I just bought a car, and then my mom helped me a lot with the money that I was getting that came in, and she just put it in the bank for me and just kind of made sure it was okay. And for a while, it was really, really good. But then as I got older, I just wanted to be irresponsible and buy things and, just be irresponsible about it. And I learned the hard way.
Well, a key to becoming a big name in action sports is video coverage. And sure, contests were cool, but videos are where legends are made. And when did you figure out that you wanted to make the leap from contests and just focus on filming?
When I knew it was really like filming for sections or being a section skater or whatever was a little bit more real than being like a competition skater, was just seeing and feeling the section when it's done and having that kind of dedication, and you have all these elements you have to fucking work with. You have a skate section, right? So you have all these spots you need to skate. And then from that, you need to figure out what angles and then the song. And then there's so much to it, And then when you create it, like, thank you, Dave Payne, for putting me onto that world. And if it wasn't for Dave Payne, I wouldn't be who I am. Chris Edwards, Dave Payne, and the Daily Bread people. But mostly the Dave Payne and Chris Edwards. Like those two dudes would be nothing.
Well, Video Groove, your VG4 segment, is the part that everybody remembers you for. And that's with Dave Payne.
Yeah. Same thing with John Julio. That birthed us. That brought us out because Dave's vision of how he saw us, and basically the Video Groove guys, because there was more than Dave. It was Sean and Morgan. They all made Video Groove so special. And like just that right there, like seeing how they put that together, I'm like, dude, this is it. This is skating right here. You know what I mean? Like you could take this to somebody, which I did, taking videotapes to everyone. Like, oh, I put on the VCR. This is what I do. You know what I mean? Like, unless you videotape the stuff that was on TV, but that's the real skating to me, and then that's why it took my heart, and that's why I dedicated so much to it.
And when you're putting together a section like that, is it something where you're thinking of tricks before the section even happens and you kind of have a strategy for it? Or is it more you just show up at a spot and you figure it out when you get there?
You know what? It's kind of 50-50. You can write out a list of tricks that you want to do. You get to the spot, and then there's something that will prevent you from doing it. Like just there's something. So it kind of changes, and then you adapt to it as you go. But usually, like most skaters, if they take it serious, they'll have a list of tricks before they go to the spot.
Yeah.
And then you just knock them off, boom, 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 and hopefully you don't get hurt.
I would think that part of filming is constantly fighting through pain to get the clips. Like your segment is going to take you a year to film, and there's going to be so many bruises and fractures and different things that happen in that year, but you just have to fight through them all to make the segment happen.
Oh yeah, the odds are against you, dude. And if you really were to sit down and think about what could go wrong, you'll never like get anything done. You know what I mean? Like you almost have to just blindly do it and then get it. You know what I mean? Like not blindly, but when it gets to the point where you're like, oh dude, I don't think I'm going to get anything finished here. You just got to push through. That's another aspect of it, is why it's so raw and what makes it so special, filming for sections.
But I would think at the end of the day, when you're filming for sections, there's less pressure on you as well, because with a contest run, you have your 2 runs, and if you don't land it, you're screwed. With filming, you have as many chances as you want. It's just the pain you have to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's very professional to be able to like go to a place, know that you can't get it that try, come back to it, maybe another day or two when you're healed up and then the right mindset, and then land it, and then you do it, and it's on tape, and you don't have to do it again. You know what I mean? It's so special, opposed to being like you said, in the contest, you're spotlighted for that 90 seconds. And if you're not on your best, out with the old, in with the new, you know what I mean? And you're just done, and who knows, but if you're a good skater, a competitive skater, that's your thing. You know what to do and what not to do. But it's a different game, dude. It's a different whole set of mind rules. It's just everything is different. It's similar, same kind of discipline and fear and whatnot, but it's different.
And we've established that contests aren't what made Eric Schrijn.
No.
But you won the first ever IMYTA street contest. And do you look at this as maybe the biggest moment of your career, is winning that contest?
Definitely one of them, because that was the first ever IMYTA and the first ever contest that I ever got to win that it was the first of, so it was super, super rad.
And the most core street contest in skating. Like, there'd never been anything like it, and there will never be anything again like it seems like.
Yeah. And what's ironic is that day that I won that comp, I got fired from rollerblade.
That day?
Yeah, that day. Dude, so many times in rollerblading that's happened where for every up, there's a down, and it's always just that, there's give and take every time.
There were a couple downs with that. Like, you skated like shit at the X Games, and that was right during the IMYTA contest. And you're not even planning on skating the IMYTA because you're in such a bad mood, because you have highs and lows, and I'm sure you're in a super low at that point. And rollerblade drops you, which has to make you even lower. And what makes you even skate the contest?
I just needed to skate, man. I don't know, just mentally. You can't leave a skate spot on that note. You got to leave on a high note. I don't know, just knowing all that shit was going on. I'm like, oh, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to skate and see what happens. And, it was cool because at the time I was learning new tricks and I had a couple tricks down and I was just like waiting to kind of use them. And we skated all these infamous spots in San Francisco. It was so special. It was such a good, like, washing your hands of a bad situation. And then I look over here, and then John's throwing this awesome organic comp where it's like he's utilizing San Francisco, like the spots, you know what I mean? Like it was the Harbor, Pier 21 or something, and then the Hyatt Rail, and then Hubba's Hideout.
All the iconic places.
Yeah, and it was so easy to just forget about all that bad shit. And threw my skates on, and fucking next thing you know, I knew I won because I turned it off. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, just get out of here.
Well, I'm going to bring it to a point in your life that's not happy. I'm going to say it's probably the darkest part or one of the darkest parts of your life. And I hate to have to bring it up, but it's part of your story. So I have to bring it up. And I don't know if my timeline's totally right, but the first crack in your armor, I'll call it, happens when you come home to a suicide of one of your stepbrothers or I don't know if they're stepbrothers or half brothers or whatever they are.
Yeah, he's my stepbrother.
And you're like 19 years old. And what can you tell me about that day? Because I think it fundamentally changes you as a person.
Yeah, it was 1998. It was in January. And like you said, it was like the peak of my career, skating for Senate and rollerblade and just traveling all the time. And everything was awesome. The highest of highs and cruising around. And like I was here at home. I was home from being on the road. And my brother was doing his thing. And he was 35 at the time. And I was just chilling in my room, and hear gunshots and whatnot. And fucking, I didn't really know. I didn't connect the dots because I don't know, people are kind of crazy and they're always loud outside. But then, I woke up to a phone call and it was my neighbor telling us not to come outside and the police were on their way. And I'm like, wait, what? And of course, I'm just going to go outside. And I went outside and I saw my brother out there and he shot himself. It was the gnarliest thing I've ever seen. And police came and did everything. And like I had to tell my mom about it because she worked nights. So she came home that night to a scene and you're like, what the fuck? And, my nephew was with us, like staying with us, and he saw it and it was changing. To this day, like I'm still messed up from it, dude, and it sucks because he's a good person. And from that moment, I learned about what mental illness is, how powerful it is, man. And I don't know, it's crazy.
Well, I'm sorry about that. And does all your emotions come out in your skating? Like, do you go from being that tech street skater to just dropping hammers and not worrying about any consequences? Like, fuck it.
Yeah. I've like found in myself that like I'm like, dude, I got this inner rage that's going on because just seeing that shit and then seeing what that stuff does to your family and how people that are in denial, how they react and just everything that comes after that. I had luckily a good channeling device and I channeled that through my skating. I kind of hurt myself doing it, but I learned some new shit. I filmed some really good sections doing it. And I don't know, I think skating for being there to allow me to channel my energy and shit when I had to, because there were some times, Mike, that were so bad. And it was just like, Jesus, and it was bad, it was a bad time. But then it was crazy, like I mentioned before, like the whole give and take thing where you can be getting so much and so living life, and then something comes along and just chops you down. And then you're like, wow, that was a big one. And then coming back from that is, how one shows their character, it's how one builds their character. Some people fall off, some people, use that as fuel, I'm still learning now, like how to deal with it because like it's crazy. It's crazy. The aftermath is I don't know. It's crazy. Suicide is a crazy thing.
And so you take some of this out on your skating, and it's like, I'll call it death blading because you're just, sending it, not really worried about the consequences. And you do get hurt, you wreck your knee. Do you have good health insurance throughout your career to take care of your injuries, or is it something that you should have had and you didn't?
Oh yeah, dude. Throughout my career, I had insurance through my parents, and then when I got older, I paid for it myself, like out of pocket. But things were changing, like the whole system of how insurance was provided. You know what I mean? Like they had PPOs and HMOs and private this. And when I was younger, I had no clue. And then I learned that I'm like, oh, why don't sponsors take care of this? Because we're kind of like a liability. I get it, but damn, dude, this is like risk. I don't know, but I had really good insurance. And every time I got injured, I just never mentioned I was a pro skater. I just pretended that I did it on accident. They're like, wow, this is a pretty crazy accident for just skating down the hill. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, I think we're past the statute of limitations with that, so that's all good. And I think another thing that almost defined you during your skate career, aside from your style, is that you smoked a shit ton of weed. And did that kind of happen after dark times happened? Did you kind of turn to weed? Because I don't think you really were drinking that much beer at that point, because I traveled with you a bunch, and it seemed like you were more pothead than alcoholic for sure.
Yeah, I think there was something kind of hidden underneath all that with like medicinal qualities of cannabis and not really knowing, like I know smoking is bad for the lungs and stuff, but as far as the healing properties of cannabis, like I think just naturally that I just veered towards it, because I mean, we drank together, we did our things, but man, like if you're trying to wake up the next morning and have like a normal day, like you can't hit the bottle.
Yeah, totally. It's time for round 2 of my sponsors. And I can't tell you how much I love the beer and other tasty beverages that the 10 Barrel Brewery creates. I'll always be a huge fan of the Profuse Juice and their Pilsner. And the craft cocktails, which have real hard A, are potent and kick ass. But what I've really been enjoying lately is their Clean Line seltzers. These are crisp, refreshing 100-calorie cans of awesomeness that's perfect for these hot summer days. My only complaint is that they go down too fast. So next time you're at the store, pick up a 6-pack of Clean Line and you'll have a new favorite seltzer. To find out more about the brand, the Pacific Northwest's best lineup of beverages, their all-time pro athlete team, and how much they support ski, snowboard, and bike, head on over to 10barrel.com. My final sponsor is Peter Glenn Ski and Sports. They have been getting people on the mountain for over 60 years, and whether you're in-store or online, they always offer the best shopping experience. And they seem to always have an Instagram contest going on. This week, Peter Glenn is teaming up with Ride Snowboards and LibTech to give away 2 awesome boards to kick off the winter season. 2 lucky winners will have their choice of either a Ride Super Pig snowboard or a LibTech Travis Rice Orca snowboard. And entry is easy. First, go to Peter Glenn Sports on Instagram and follow Peter Glenn Sports, Lib Technologies, and Ride Snowboards. Second, like the giveaway post from LibTech and Ride. Third, tag 2 friends in the comments. It's that easy. The giveaway ends on Friday, September 2nd, and the winner will be announced then. Good luck. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. So at the height of your blazing, how many spliffs do you think you smoked a day?
Oh man, maybe 6 or 7, 10, depending on how much was there, if there was there was a lot, it's crazy. Like that's a whole nother story. Cause we went to Amsterdam together. That was really fun.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to talk about that at the end of this a little bit, but one other thing I want to get is when you traveled, I think one of the first things that you liked to do when you got to a city was find weed. And what was the strangest or most unique way that you found weed in a city?
Oh, dude, we would just, we would go to like, for instance, in Pennsylvania at the skate park at Woodward, we went to the arcade and we would just hit up people at the arcade and ask people like, oh, hey, and you guys got good weed? Is there any good weed around here? We're not from the state. Just totally taking caution to the wind, not even caring. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that's cool. Could be undercovers here. But that got me in trouble one time. Me and Shima, we were in France. We were at this magazine, we're this office called Crazy Roller.
Yep.
They're not around anymore. Yeah, we got in trouble, asking around and actually going about it way too relaxed. And we just, we got our stuff, started smoking in the streets of Paris, and then we got arrested.
Oh.
We spent the day in their drunk tank, so to speak. They took us in one by one and interrogated us and totally gave us all different stories and told us we weren't going to come home and call our parents because we're stuck there. It was so scary, Mike. Then they let us go. They brought us all into a room and they brought all of our our weed and hash or whatever and had put it in a pile. And they looked at us and they're like, you know what? we're going to have a party. Like, wait, what? And then they let us go.
That's amazing.
Yeah, dude, that was like one story from it. And it was cool. Like cannabis was probably like being a stoner skater was, the lesser of evils during that time because it helped. It helped a lot. It soothed, and it calmed down a lot of things.
I think it was the best choice because there was a lot of people that drank. And like you said, those people couldn't get up early and they were constantly puffy and sweating like a pig and just like all the things that alcohol do to you that you never had going on. But we don't need to talk about weed that much more because we're going to move further into your career. And you eventually land on Razors because you're off a rollerblade and you go to Razors. And that program was a great one. You have Robert on that team and some of your crew on the team. And the brand was as core as it got back then. Did you feel like you were finally where you belonged with a real street team instead of a corporate brand?
Yeah. At that time, Razors was coming up. They were the core company that if you were a skater, like you'd want to be a part of. Like Levanos was there, Marco Hinse was there, John Elliott, and a bunch of upcoming guys that are well known now, like Shima and everybody. And it was badass, dude. Like Wagner had a good thing going. You know what I mean? Andy Wagner. He's a good guy. You know what I mean? He put it out there and, he's like the granddad of skating, like he really loves it.
But he's the head of Razors and he's the guy who kind of is like the king in that whole Razor kingdom. And the difference between Razors and Rollerblade is a whole lot. Is the travel and money and everything else a lot less than you experience with Rollerblade because you're skating for a core brand now? Like, are you trading security and everything else for being cool?
Yeah, I took a little hit on the pay. It was like $500 less, but that was a small price to pay for the memories and the wildness of it. You know what I mean? I can compare it to if you're like a guitar player, you're signed to like a major label and they're super strict and corporate. They don't want you to do anything. They want your image to be super clean. And then you have like the underground independent labels that they don't care. They just want you to be yourself.
Yeah.
They want you to do that because that's what brings out your best magic. You know what I mean? And I felt like that's kind of how it was.
Yeah, that's a pretty good analogy. And you were part of helping that brand stay as core as they were because you pretty much fit perfectly in with that brand. And given I'm happy that you left when you did, but we're going to talk about something else before you leave to come to K2. And we talked about mental health a little bit earlier, when you're talking about your brother. But mental health is something that I noticed with you is like there were definitely highs and lows whenever we traveled. And the more I did research about this, I was reading an article and it said that in like 2001 or something, you were diagnosed as bipolar. And while in 2001, we wouldn't talk about this shit because people didn't talk about mental health and it was frowned upon talking about. These days, we talk about it, we're transparent about it, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just like we treat it and things are manageable or we try to make them manageable. But you're diagnosed in 2001. And what does that mean in your case? Like, what are the problems that you're dealing with in life that being bi made more difficult? Sorry, I wanted to call you bi.
No, that's cool. It didn't make anything more difficult in a way. It just made it so I could pinpoint the issue and actually address it to the point where I was always wondering, like, because after my brother, like everything just like my anxieties. And then I think that just kind of brought out more of what I thought was in the end diagnosed as being bipolar, and it made things, I guess, just harder to deal with. And then with skating, a lot of the falls would bring out some of it, you know what I mean? And just the constant dealing with it, and then health too, like my actual nutrition and whatnot, like that kind of interfered with it a lot too. But at the same time, having the knowledge of being diagnosed with being bipolar, I don't know, it just kind of made it easier for me to point at, you know what I mean? Like, oh, that's me being bipolar, you know what I mean? Like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you have a reason for a lot of these things. Do they prescribe you with any medicine or anything or any way to treat it?
Yeah. I was for a while, actually. I was on a psychotropic, like it's an SSR, I think it was, the Paxil.
Okay, yeah. That was really popular back in that time.
Yeah, and it was crazy, man, because I was on that for like 7 or 8 years, close to 10 years. And then they switched up the manufacturer. And then like my providers, like my insurance providers would always give me generic. And that would affect the whole feel. You know what I mean? So I went from going like cruising, like all the chemicals upstairs were good, no peaks or valleys. And then I'd have a full-on new kind of medicine. And it's like, oh, no, it's similar to Paxil. But then I felt that. I'm like, oh, my God, this is nothing like that. And then I'd get another one from another doctor and then another one. And I'm like, dude, this is insane. And that's why I kind of would lean on cannabis so much, because it was a constant. I knew how it would make me feel. It wasn't dangerous. You know what I mean? I didn't have to worry about like opiates or anything like that. So it was just more and more in the green. No pun intended.
Yeah.
just, it was so much better. And doing more research on it too is just the way to go. You know what I mean? And then I think after being on Paxil for like almost 12 years, I didn't cold turkey it. I tapered off because if you cold turkey it, it's really bad for your brain. You know, it can leave you with residual effects that'll just mess you up in the future. So I got off that, and then I learned how to basically just grow cannabis. And because at that time, the state was allowing you to do certain things, you know, like you can get a card and you have all these different rights. And it was cool, man.
So you were medicating yourself after that point? You were growing your own weed and medicating that way?
Yeah. Instead of drinking and whatnot and all that, because that's not good. But yeah, so just going through the woods of going through doctors, you know, and this and that, and getting different kind of prescriptions. I'm like, dude, this is not working, you know. And it's just, those are strong psychotropic drugs, you know, like it'll alter your thought process completely. One day you're like this, and another day you are a totally different person. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And for a minute it was very hard, you know, but skating and cannabis really kept me on track, and having good friends, you know. But sometimes I was just in my head so much, you know, it's hard.
Yeah, I could see it on the road sometimes. You'd kind of like jump inside your head and you'd just be quiet, and you'd sit there, and I'd either think, oh, he's just really stoned. But that was me then. Now thinking back to it, it was like, oh, he might have been bummed and was just kind of like in his own head and figuring things out. But that was then. Yeah. And in terms of your career at that point, you were on razors for a long time, but you kept getting passed over for a pro model. And I'm sure that's the last dream in skating for you that hadn't come true.
Yeah.
Does that eventually get so frustrating that that's why razors comes to an end for you?
Kind of. It was just the communication thing. Like, the razors has a notorious history with just like having the best riders and then just having them leave because just the way that they run things, you know what I mean? And at one time there's an opportunity for me to get a pro skate, but then it changed because there was a lot of skaters at the time on the team that were from Esco. And, you know, the powers that be at the time were just like, you know what, why don't we just do it this way instead of this way? And then it would change so much, you know, and I was like, all right, well, whatever, man. And then at the end result, we ended up getting, there was a Esco Pro Model boot, which was like divvied between 3 skaters. It was cool. You know, it was a good answer for something, but like.
Better than nothing.
Yeah, you know, but it was like, I don't know, whatever, man. It was just weird.
Well, that's where we hook up because of that, I feel like, because you're not happy with razors. I think we were at a movie premiere and we were talking, and that got the ball rolling for you to come to K2 on an official level. And did that make you nervous, putting all your trust in a corporation that really hadn't done too much to earn the trust of skaters?
Yeah, well, you know what? You came off as such a cool person, and I already knew, like, from the past how cool K2 was and how they're just K2. Like, it was such a different feel. Like, it was kind of like the hippie company, you know, that just had their shit together.
Yep.
Like with Tom Heiser and Matt Lacrosse, like, everyone knew of that. And just being like, oh, wow, dude, like, officially being a part of it. And like back when I first started, like getting flow from K2, so like I kind of felt the vibes, you know what I mean? So I felt it was like, it was safe. And just to say like, oh yeah, dude, I'm a part of K2, like it goes a long way.
There is some cachet to telling people that you're on K2 because people have heard of it before. You can be on a plane and tell someone that, and they're like, oh, that's great, my skis are K2. If you say razors, they are totally confused and have no idea what you're talking about. So there is a lot of street cred being on K2, even though there's no street cred to K2 within the inline world, it seems like.
Yeah.
I mean, while there are a ton of benefits for riding for a brand like K2, was it frustrating not to be as core again because you're not on razors?
Yeah, you know, it was a bit of a departure, but then at the same time, like, I felt like it was needed because I'm like, I needed something a little bit more solid, you know, and more respected in a way. And it was kind of like a middle finger too, in a way, like to razors. Because at the end of the day, they wanted to be like Rollerblade, like back then. You know, they wanted to have like the core, cool, badass, like rock and roll team or rebellious team. But then at the end of the day, still be professional. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they couldn't. It was just super, a lot of the times, just unprofessional all the time. And I couldn't deal with it. You know what I mean? And it being so close to home made it really cool because they were like in Vista. You know, that's like a rock throw away from my house. So that made it even cooler. But there's only so much you can deal with.
Well, we said we were going to give you a pro model when you came to K2, as long as you were willing to wait a few years, and you were. And we were able to make a pro model. That shit actually happened. What was the feeling you had the first time you saw your Eric Schrijn skate?
Dude, it was like unbelievable. I'm like, oh my God, like this is amazing. You know what I mean? Because there's like milestones you have to reach being a skater, and especially growing up and watching everyone else, you know, like all my peers just getting pro models. It's a major milestone, you know what I mean? And not being able to do it and being in the industry for so long, I was like, dude, like, fuck, man. But then getting it and looking at it and holding it in my hands, like, I could kiss you, Mike. I could kiss you.
And I mean, it was one of 2 pro models ever made for K2. And based on them not being in the aggressive world anymore and not producing aggressive skates for the past 5 years, I think you're going to go down as like one of the 2 aggressive skates with the signature model in K2's history. And that's just how it's going to end. So that's got to be something that feels pretty good.
Hell yeah. And I have my pair that are in my archives, but I have them in a shelf here with like all my achievements in my shelf. And, I got the rolling game in there, the video game I got in. And that right there, that and getting a pro model skate from K2 were like my biggest achievements, dude.
How many covers did you get?
Covers, like
magazine covers, because I would think that's one to check off the list too.
not that many, probably like 4 or 5.
Okay.
I got one cover of Daily Bread, which that was a big one because that like if you're in the scene, like, oh, did you get the cover of Daily Bread? Like that one's big.
That's like having the cover of Sports Illustrated.
Yeah, Sports Illustrated, Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
Like you're on it, dude. And or Time,
Yeah.
Time magazine. That was it, and I got one of those. Thank God, I was fucking yes, stoked. There's another really cool one, which was called Inline Magazine, which came out back in the day, like 95, 96. On the cover, it was me, Neil Seymour, rest in peace, and Jeff Loretto. It was in Irvine at the UCI college, just at a random staircase. We're all just sitting in the staircase with our blades on. It's like, the future is here.
And then taking it back to K2, things ended really abruptly there. I was given notice in October that the inline budget would be cut by 80%, which left all the team, all the ads, and pretty much everything to be cut. And I'm pretty sure I'd call you and tell you that. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah. I was kind of expecting it because at that time in my career, like I was so used to like the behavior and the rhythm, and I'm like, it was bound to happen, and then it happened, and it was totally cool, like no hard feelings at all, and it was kind of like the natural progression of it. That's how things happen, man.
And then after that, I think you end up skating on Rem's product. Is this around the time you first had to get a job to pay the bills, like a real job?
Yeah, actually, a little bit before that, I was working like just random. I was working at like a car lot. I was a lot attendant for a while, and then I worked at a T-Mobile selling cell phones.
This is while you're pro?
Yeah, like on my way out. Or actually, I didn't quit the industry. The industry quit me.
Sure. Yeah.
I was still going, and everybody was kind of, literally everyone was on hiatus. Like all my friends that I grew up with, skating, Robert, Louis, everybody, they were all going into the actual world and finding new careers and starting a whole new life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, like almost in denial. You know what I mean? Like, how could it do this? You know what I mean? Like go from this and then just totally nothing, like, sorry guys, have fun out in the fray. Not that dramatic, but like, just.
But it was crazy how fast the bottom dropped out of the whole industry. I mean, we saw the
overnight,
numbers of
dude.
skates drop like significantly within 3 years to the point where it was like, holy shit, budgets need to be cut 80% because we're selling 80% less product.
Absolutely, yeah. And I learned so much. Just that's the nature of it. That's the nature of the beast. When either trends come to an end or something, something comes to an end. This is the aftermath of it. And then it building up again. That was a cool experience, and just everything, seeing the behavior of it, it's really cool.
So the end of things with K2, is that where you look at your pro career kind of dropping off right there?
Yeah. That's when I feel like I'm like, that was pretty much it. I got to the top of the mountain as far as accomplishments, and then after that was just thinking to myself, longevity, like still want to skate, still got a lot of gas left in my tank, so skate, skate more. But then, like you said, with the remedies, I tried on the remedies for a minute and then I got used to them, but then I broke my leg in those.
Yeah, like tib fib, right?
Yeah. And it was bad. The doctor called it was like a ski break, they call it, where it's just like your leg's just like a noodle.
The spiral kind of fracture?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that sucks, man. And so you get some hardware in there, and I'm sure you'll feel that hardware for the rest of your life, which kind of sucks. But you still skate almost all the time, which is amazing. There was a while where you were growing weed. Were you selling it to dispensaries?
Yeah. Well, at the time, the state jurisdiction, so to speak, like the state bill, or not bill, excuse me, it was the bylaw or whatever. It was Prop 215, which allowed you, if you had the means, you could be a grower / cultivator, and you could be a caregiver for certain people. So if other people had the same license as you and they didn't have the means to grow, they gave you the rights for them to grow for them. So like everyone was entitled up to 12 plants, and I would basically look over, say, like 6 people's plants under my grow operation. So it was really, really cool, dude. Like I had a whole network of patients in parentheses, and I had a full-on professional setup, air control, everything. It was like biochemistry. You know what I mean? It was super cool.
Did the laws change and that's why you're out of that?
Yeah, yeah, the laws changed overnight, like skating. It went from Prop 215 to Prop 64, literally overnight. That was basically, it turned from it being decriminalized to legal or recreational. And when it goes into recreational, it falls under a whole nother set of bylaws that makes it so like it creates dry counties and dry states. So all the laws that I was under with Prop 215 were all out the window. So I couldn't cultivate anymore. Anyone who had a Prop 215 card, basically all that shit it's gone. It's invalid, and all your props, everything you had to get rid of, and the actual like narcotic divisions of the police stations around all knew of this, and they were going around to people and like saying, hey man, like you have X amount of time to take down your setup, and then we'll come back and check up on you. And it was crazy, dude. But I have a cool story about that. I was like balls deep into all of it, and I was making pretty good money. I was making like 40 grand a year. I did this for like almost 8 years. And around like the 7th year, like when it was starting to get to an end, I got a knock on my door from the narcotics division police department here from Esco. And it's like these giant dudes, man. They weren't even like wearing police uniforms. They just had their badges on like a necklace.
Uh-huh.
They just rolled up like SWAT style. And they're like, hey, we need to take a look at your setup because we heard so-and-so and you're doing this. I'm like, God damn, dude. Like the law changed so fast. And they came in and they did their thing and they made their presence known, scared the shit out of me. And then one of them was like, hey, do you know Chris Edwards? I'm like, wait, what? And he was the head too. He was the head guy. He's like, hey, you know Chris Edwards? I'm like, yeah, I do. Why? He's like, yeah, I'm looking at your shelf here. And it's like my shelf with my skate and all my medals and stuff. And there's a picture of Chris and stuff in there. He's like, yeah, I went to high school with Chris Edwards and he was really into skating. And it's like, oh, I never thought that was around anymore. I'm like, yeah, dude, like made a career, talked about it. He was super cool. And then he was just like, you know what? Just don't worry about this, bro. Don't worry about it. Just give me a call, and you won't get in trouble or anything, because they were there to run shop. They were going to take down all my plants and just raid the place. And it went from like super crazy to super chill. Like I was one of the homies. You know what I mean?
The world is all about who you know.
Yeah. So that was a cool period, in my life, and helped a lot, learned a lot, but it was crazy. But it all came back to skating. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Chris Edwards saved you.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. And now it seems like you are all about the homebrew, and you're doing that. And you've got a homebrew setup where you can finally can your homebrews, which is pretty exciting for someone who's that into their beer, because I can tell that you're really into your beer. But we're not going to talk about beer, because at this point it's time for inappropriate questions.
Yes.
I got your skate partner for the ages, Louis Zamora, a dude who just got a new job at a recovery center, which is amazing for Louis, to ask the question.
Yeah, dude, I'm so proud of him. I'm so proud of that dude.
He's getting his shit together, and he's just an amazing dude, and it's nice to see that when people fall, that there's other people that will help them get up, and it sounds like that's what's happening with Louis, and he's in a good place right now, and he's just got to go every day and try to be in a good place, and things will work out for him. But Louis asked you he asked you 2 inappropriate questions. I'm going to come in with the final one. So first, I'm going to play Louis' first inappropriate question right now.
Okay.
Eric, do you remember when we used to go skate all the time? It was really fun. We'd all be excited, go with the crew, cruising around. But every single time, it would cost $5 for gas. And every time we'd give you that $5, you'd go in the store and buy drinks with it. What was up with that?
Oh, my God, dude. You know what's funny? They never, ever, ever stopped. Like, they gave me shit for that every day. I'm like, hey, you know what? It was a build up to that, okay? Like, I didn't just outright, like, okay, you guys owe me gas money. Because we would go to places, and, dude, we would go all over, and, they were little punks, dude. Like, just every time we would go somewhere, it was crazy. You know what I mean? And I'm like, these guys got to learn some kind of responsibility. They got to learn something, dude. And then after a while, after everybody was getting paid from skating, that, mind you, I introduced them all to, you know what I'm saying? Like, we would always go places, and I'm like, dude, there was absolutely no responsibility here. They're unadulterated. We're out here being crazy all the time, and I have to fork, it was like, gas wasn't that expensive back then, but basically my parents forked up the minivan for us to drive around. It was like the skatemobile. They're like, here's a car for you guys to go and do your thing. It was an Astro minivan. So you guys are taken care of, insured, everything. And here's a gas card. You know what I mean? So don't go too crazy. And that was it, dude. These kids had to learn responsibility.
You're just teaching them a lesson. Well, I'm going to jump into Louis' second inappropriate question.
That was a long response, but I had to break it down.
All good, man. Here we go.
I don't know. I remember you telling me some stories when we were younger about when your dad used to get you upset. Do you remember what you did to kind of get back at your dad at all when he was upsetting you at all?
Oh my God. He's going for the dark files.
It sounds pretty funny, yeah.
It's funny, dude, but I'm gonna burn in hell for it, and I hope you don't get in trouble. Well, okay, everyone knows that my dad's blind, and growing up as a kid when I was younger, like he would piss me off, man, and he'd push it to the point he'd make everybody mad, and just whatever, it's personal family stuff, but to get back at him, like I would leave the cabinets open, so he'd like walk into them, like, stuff like that, dude, and like sometimes, I'd say I got some good beef jerky, and then he'd be like, "Oh, let me have a piece," and then I'd give him some dog jerky, some dog treats. And he'd be like, "Oh, this is good. Oh, this is awesome." I'm like, "Yeah, that's good jerky. Oh yeah."
Oh man.
Oh yeah, stuff like that. But
oh, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I'm gonna burn for that one.
Yeah, you're gonna face some consequences somewhere for that. But my final question is more of a question with a story that we'll go through. So you remember the Amsterdam trip we went on?
Yeah.
And when we flew home, we flew out of Frankfurt. There's 2 different airports in Frankfurt. That'll be the second part of the story. But for the first part, I was flying home early. You were flying to England, and you were going to be in England for a week. And our flights are at different airports. So I go to the airport, and you had given me a pill the night before. You were like, "Hey, man, take this on the plane. You will fall asleep, and you'll wake up in Seattle." I never usually take anything when I get on a plane, but I was like, "Good call, Eric." So I get on my flight. I get in my row, and there's no one in it. I have 3 seats to myself, so I take this pill. I lay down. I go to sleep, and I wake up, I don't know how long later, with a stewardess pushing on me. And I wake up to her, and I'm all groggy. And she's like, "Sir, this plane is broken. You have to go to gate D something else. And you've got another plane that's taking off." And I'm the only one on the plane at this point, me and my briefcase, because I used to carry a briefcase around back then. So yeah. I lug my briefcase to the new gate, and I'm like in another world. I don't know who I am because I don't know what I've taken. And I look at the lady at the gate. I'm like, "Hey, I'm going to sleep right here next to your desk. Please wake me up when it's time to get on the plane." And I just lay down on the floor and pass out. Anyway, they get me up. I get on the plane. I lay down in my 3 seats. I wake up 20 minutes from Seattle, and I make it home, and everything was perfect. What the hell did you give me?
Dude, okay, you know how earlier we were talking about how my doctors would always give me kinds of crazy medicines and diagnose me with shit? At that time, they gave me Seroquel. That was Seroquel.
Okay. I have to look it up now. I don't even know what that is, but that's what I took. Because, I was like, I don't know who I was for like 14 hours.
I'll tell you what it is. It's an antipsychotic med that if you're not psychotic and you don't go through that, you don't have those chemical fucking imbalances, it puts you right to sleep. So at that time, they were looking at it as a great sleeping pill because, if you take certain medicines, the counter is you're up, like, sometimes you're up like speed and you have to take sleeping medicines. The same as if you take medicine that makes you constipated, you have to take a stool relaxer, shit like that. So it was one of those. So like I was taking, I forgot what kind of psychotropic meds, but they're like, "Here you go, here's some Seroquel. It'll put you to sleep because that stuff might keep you up." Like, okay. And I'm like, dude, that shit fucking, it worked getting there. You know what I mean? It knocked me out for 8 hours, but that's what it was Seroquel.
Yeah, that was pretty insane. And so the second part of this story is you and Ben Weiss are at a different airport because there's 2 airports, like I said, in Frankfurt. And I had sent you to the wrong airport. So you missed your flight to England, and you and Ben traveled quite frequently with no money whatsoever. So in your bank account, you had like $0. Ben has $0, and you guys have 0 cash. And if I'm not around, you guys aren't eating or doing anything, which is crazy to me, but whatever. That was kind of the deal. And you guys missed your flight. You're able to get some kind of shuttle to the right airport, but you have no one to contact. I'm on a plane back to the U.S. What do you guys do to try to get money and try to figure things out? Are you guys just losing your mind, or what was going on in your world?
I remember clearly sitting at the booking agent, like at the desk in Germany, and being like, fuck, what are we going to do? And we just kind of roughed it. We just figured it out, and we got a ride to the right airport. And then we got a hold of Jake from England. He helped us a lot, because that's who we ended up staying with. What is his name?
Ely.
Yeah, he's a good kid. And he pretty much helped us, him and a couple other dudes. And I think we ran into a skater that was at the airport. Like, it was on some Fight Club shit, dude.
You guys told me that you were hungry and you went outside to a ledge and were trying to do tricks for money.
Yeah. Dude, that's what it was. We were doing that shit, and we were noticed by a skater, and they were like, "Hey man, like, what's up?" And then they helped us out. And I remember asking a guy for a cigarette in Germany, and he looked at me like I was a piece of shit, dude. I'm like, "What the fuck, dude? I'm just asking for a cigarette," because I asked for it in English. He looked at me seriously from down up like 2 or 3 times, like, "What are you, you disgusting little person?" Like, it was so funny, dude. And oh man, we learned so much. Oh, Ben Weiss, love that dude.
I landed in Seattle to like 40 voicemails on my phone from like different K2 people and everything, but I'm like in a haze from whatever medicine you gave me, your Seroquel, and I'm like, don't know what's going on. So I start calling the airport in Germany, and first I'm like, Ben Weiss, and like everyone's probably named Ben Weiss there. So they're like, Ben Weiss, Ben Weiss. I'm like, oh shit, that's not going to work. And then I'm like trying to spell your last name, Eric Schrijn, and it's like, Schrijn. But then I'd be like, Schrijn. And I realized nothing was happening. Finally, I got in touch with the guy from England, and he said that you guys were en route, and you guys showed up to England with no money for a week, and they took care of everything there for you, and it was an amazing trip. You got a cover out of it. You got a story out of it, and there was a contest. I think that you guys were involved there, a street contest where Ben got some photos at. So it was a pretty amazing trip all around. That is our podcast, Eric. I want to tell you that over my career, you are, obviously in my top 5, one of my favorite people to travel with, period. You were always just a great person to talk to and always so kind and sweet and gentle, it seemed like you. There was never any mad Eric Schrijn, given we talked about mental issues. If you were sad or anything, it was all kept internally, and I never ever felt it, I don't think. So it's nice that you shielded me from any of your anger that you had during your career, and maybe that's just how you handled problems. But I thank you for being you. Thank you for your time, and I had a great time during your career and the part that I was a part of it.
Oh, well, thank you, Mike, and thank you for being there, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to make these stories and memories. You're a good dude, and thank you very, very much. And do you remember, I'm going to end this though, do you remember the time when I mentioned in the bus when we're driving, I'm like, I got to keep it real with you guys. I got to keep it real. You remember that?
Did it have to do with your hemorrhoids?
Yep. I'm like, guys, I got to keep it real, man. You guys are like, what's wrong, man? What's wrong? I'm like, I got fucking hemorrhoids, man. And you're like, oh shit. Yeah, man, for real.
So that was time with Eric Schrijn, and what a story. I mean, his life seemed like everything was so easy and hard all at the same time. Skate-wise, he made all his dreams come true really young, and while you would think that would make him a really happy person, the way mental illness can rear its ugly head is so unpredictable. And then when you hear about his challenges on the home front, it makes it easier to understand how things can look great for a person from the outside, but they really aren't. And I don't want to paint a sad picture for Eric, as it sounds like he's doing really well these days. But the whole story is not as happy as it looks like from the outside, and it was really cool of Eric to share those details. That's the podcast. Now it's time for the review of the week, and it's a 5-star review that comes from Sticks2112. The review is titled Great Find. Here's the review. Mike is an excellent interviewer. His guests are the leaders in their industries, and he dives deep into his guests to bring out information the average listener would never know about. Great show, awesome find, and look forward to more episodes. Thank you very much, Sticks, for that review. I really love it when people say that I'm a great interviewer, and I take pride in that, and in the research that I do. I mean, it's funny. When I started this podcast, I thought my sense of humor would really come out. Like I would be the funny and witty host that people would want to listen to again and again. But in reality, I've become the dude who does more research than anyone and gets the most out of my guests. And while that wasn't my intention when I started this thing, I'm now proud to be that guy, and I'll take it. So again, thank you, and please email me at mike@thepowellmovement.com with your address, and I'll send you a beanie. For anybody else that wants a beanie, it's easy. You can buy one from my website, or you can post a review on iTunes or on Spotify, or even on social media. Yep, just post onto one of your socials about how much you like the podcast or how great you think it is if you feel that way, and tag me so I can see it. If I read that on the show, email me with your address and I will send you this limited edition beanie. Thank you for that, and thank you for listening, and please support my incredible sponsors who make the show happen. They are Stanley, Elon Skis, Rollerblade, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Have a great week, everyone.